Welcome to the Business of Dance podcast, where you'll learn what it takes to create your dream professional dance career.
Join us as we dive into the insights and experiences of the world's top dance industry professionals, including dancers, choreographers, agents, casting directors, educators, and other dance industry experts.
We explore a diverse range of topics, from personal development and mental skills to audition techniques, creating meaningful industry connections, social media marketing, seeking out dance agents and casting opportunities, on-the-job etiquette, talent unions, pitching to the media, health, finances, and so much more.
Here is your host, Menina Fortunato.
Today we have a very special guest. What's really fun is I was a guest on his show not that long ago. The episode actually just released recently. So now he gets to sit in the hot seat today. If you don't already know him, he is a dance educator, choreographer, adjudicator, artist. He's been on shows like America's Got Talent. He's collaborated with brands like Hermes and Icon Fitness, Toys R Us, Crocs, Bud Light. He's also the host and the creator of No Starving Artists. Without further ado, let's give some virtual love to Mr. Jason Pickett. Hello.
What's going on, y'all?
Hi, welcome. So
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. This is fun. We get to switch roles. Last time,
Yeah.
hot seat. Now you're in the hot seat. Let's dive in. For dancers that don't know who you are, I'd love for you to give us a backstory of how did you even get started in dance? When was that? What did that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I'm 29 at the moment, and I started dancing around like 14, maybe. It's a little blurry because it wasn't like I just went into a studio and started dancing. So I don't have a super clear timeline. I just organically started dancing because I saw YouTube was getting really big at that time. I saw a lot of people dancing on YouTube. Music videos were still pretty big at that time, and live performances. There were some movies like Stomp the Yard and Step Up that came out. And so dance was just around in culture really heavily around that time. So I started dancing, started teaching really, really soon after that. I started teaching when I was 16. I stayed with the same studio for about 6 or 7 years, grew their hip hop program, taught all of their competitive routines, cleaned them, went to competition, the whole thing. All the while, I was also training for myself, which is a weird dynamic. I was going to conventions with them. I was taking classes. And then along the way, I made some connections, gathered some mentors of my own, and they started booking me for professional jobs. And we grew all together around the same time and started doing a bunch of different things, as Menina mentioned. And more recently, I've always created content. Content has been a huge part of my dance journey since I started. But as of about 2 years ago now, I got really consistent, started thinking a little bit more about what my big goals were when I started teaching and how I could actually get to those. And one of those was to be able to teach on a dance convention and travel the world and teach. And so started creating content. Flash forward, it worked. And now I'm extremely thankful and grateful I get to travel with multiple conventions. I teach and judge all over the world. It's incredible. So that's just a little condensed version of how I got here.
I love that. So would you say you were self-taught at the beginning, or did you actually jump into a studio when you were 14?
No, yeah, just self-taught. The funny part is, like, a lot of people ask me why I got into dancing. The truthful answer is I had a lot of inspiration. So I was like, I saw these things and I was like, this is cool. I started going to parties around this same, I'm not advocating you go to parties, but I did. Started going to parties and I started seeing like the people that were getting a lot of attention at the party were people that could dance and they were really good dancers. And so I just went up to them and I was like, hey, like, what is this? How do I do this? So I was lucky enough to come across some really, really great dancers really early on here in Utah where I live. And they were able to help me. And so in the beginning, it was a lot of freestyle dancing. I battled a lot. That was the realm that I took up. Yeah. So very much self-taught with a lot of inspiration and a lot of just trying to be a sponge in any arena that I was in.
Now, other than the parties, was there other outside inspirations, whether musical artists or choreographers or YouTube? Like, what did you see that made you feel like, oh, I want to learn that too?
Yeah. So at the time when I started dancing around the same time, like I said, Stomp the Yard was like, that's one movie that I really remember
Mm,
being like a huge inspiration for me. Same thing with Step Up, but Stomp the Yard was really, really big. And then YouTube, what was happening with YouTube at the time is that dancers were finally starting to they were posting like class content on YouTube. And this was very early on. This was before like fancy gimbals, and it was just like a tripod shot. It was super blurry and everyone was in the video. There was no groups. It was just like the choreo. So I remember seeing people like Sean Evaristo and Ian Eastwood and Brian Puspos. There was another dancer choreographer named Marcus Pay Benito. All of these people are still active today, but they were like the groundwork for what I wanted to do. They were creating concept videos, they were doing class videos, they were teaching all over the world at all these huge camps. And so that was like my uninformed, naive dance brain was like, oh, that's what you do. You start dancing and then you teach around the world. Doesn't make any sense, but that's what I was thinking at the time.
And I think it's great that you started teaching so young. I did as well. I was teaching at 12 while I was still in my training years. So I'm honestly not shocked, but who do you want to give a shout out to that actually gave you an opportunity with very little training at that point?
Yeah, the studio was called Inspire Dance Studio. It was created and directed by a lady named Whitney Hidalgo. She still owns it today. My wife actually teaches there currently.
Oh, wow.
And so I still pop in from time to time and do things. But yeah, I definitely owe a lot to them because, like you said, they gave me an opportunity. Probably shouldn't have been teaching. I had no clue what I was doing, but they gave me an opportunity. And then it was sort of like, it was like a kind of just a free for all. It was like, here's what not to do whatever you want. And so it really allowed me to kind of like cut my teeth in terms of how I was going to be a teacher, what things worked, what things didn't work, that type of thing.
Amazing. At what point did you actually take it to the next level and do the whole convention competition scene? How many years later did that pop into your life?
As far as teaching,
Yeah.
that was just recently. I had done a couple like smaller conventions, like one-off things, but it wasn't until again, a lot of roads, as I'm sure a lot of you have talked about before with Menina, lead back to your network and the people that you know. One of my like side skills is videography and content. So I did video for a handful of conventions and teachers and classes and events. One in particular was these in-house events called Reinforce, and it was headed up by a guy named Ben Bigler, and he taught on convention that one of my studios, it was like their home convention. So I met Ben through them. He asked me to come film some of their in-house events, and I just let him know like right off the bat, like, hey, if you ever need another teacher or if this ever grows, I would love to be involved. And sure enough, maybe 6 months later, he approached me and said, hey, we're taking this out of the studio and we're going to launch it as a full-fledged convention competition. Would you like to be on board? And I was like, no questions asked, yes. When it comes to things that are in line with my goals, most of the time it's a no questions thing. It's not what am I going to get out of this at the moment? It's no, this is in line with what I need to do. So the answer is yes. I don't care about the details. Send me the contract and I'll sign it. And so now I am with them. They do 2 to 3 events a year that I work with as well. So just recently, a year ago, is when I really was able to get into that space.
So would you say your content creation was really what put you on the map to get the eyeballs to even be considered for that line of work? Because I know you're
100%.
super busy. You're super busy now. I see you all over the place judging and teaching. Fun fact for the dancers, he actually judged my daughter last season, and I had no clue until I got to the competition now, and I looked at the program book and I'm like, Jason Pickett, he's the No Starving Artist guy. We didn't actually talk until after the event was over, but we connected afterwards. And that was in Vancouver in Canada. So
yeah,
you are literally all over the place. So would you say there's a formula to your content creation, to the stuff that you put out, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram? I feel like you're pretty consistent from what I've
Yeah.
seen as an outsider looking in. What's your strategy behind content creation?
Yeah. Very transparent about like everything that I do because there's no reason not to be. So I have a marketing degree. That's the first thing to understand is that I
very
went to
cool.
school for marketing. I have a bachelor's in marketing. And so a lot of what I do is driven from that background. There's a very big marketing content creator named Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
Gary
And
V. Yes. The business world knows about him. The dancers don't. Yes.
Yeah. And as a lot of people in the business world, especially younger people my age, I was very attracted to this entity that was Gary V when he first popped on the map. And so I always had this idea of what would a dance Gary V look like, somebody that's like really brutally honest, somebody that really tells it how it is. And so that was step one. Step two was who am I going to talk to? And I knew that I wanted to get into studios. I knew that it was really hard to get a hold of studios and get their attention. So I worked backwards and said, okay, what's the best way to get into studios quickly? And that's to play to the parents. If I play to the parents, then the parents will ask their studios to bring me in. And then now I can get into these spaces that I want to be in. The third part was the consistency aspect. So just making sure that I was as consistent as possible, trying a million different things until something worked. And then once something worked, I just kept doing that thing with different kind of meat underneath. So the outline was relatively similar, but the actual content was different. So that's like the first few things. The consistency is really, really, really important. And then the other component that I picked up along the way, because I had the podcast, I always knew that I wanted to have the podcast. I didn't really know what the purpose of it was at the beginning. And then I realized really quickly that this is a great tool for me to be able to talk to people that I want to talk to and have conversations that can help other people, but can also help me. So every single podcast, I would just drop little notes about, at the end of the call, I would just be like, I'm really interested in doing this. What would your advice be for me? I remember I did a podcast with Francisco Guella, and I told him, I said, I want to teach on a convention, because he asked me, he said, what are your goals? I said, I want to teach on a convention. And he said, okay, then you need to show people what that looks like. What does you teaching on a convention look like? So from that point on, my content shifted to, okay, I need to show people me in the classroom. I need to show them what it looks like to take a class from me, not the choreography, not the combos. What does it actually look like to take class from me? So I started paying for people to come film my classes. And that started to become like the main component of my content at that point.
Amazing. Now, do you say, when it comes to your content, because you are very consistent, are you constantly recording, documenting, releasing, or do you have content days for yourself where you mass produce a bunch of content, take several days or weeks to get it edited and planned? What is your strategy around the content creation portion before you actually release it?
Yeah, this is something where I differ a little bit from a lot of creators, at least from my understanding. My process is very, very like quick fire, no thought whatsoever. The quickest way that I can possibly get something out is the way that I do it. There really is not, and this is hard to believe because a lot of people accuse me of like pre-planning so much. I really do not plan much of anything. If I have a thought, I pull out my phone, selfie camera on, record it, chop off the beginning, chop off the end, post it. That's literally the process. What I found out really early on is if it took longer than a few minutes for me to do what I wanted to do, I would just stop doing it and I would stop getting consistent. If I had to like plan and set stuff up and do all these things, I just ended up eventually, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't have time to do this. For me, that just works. And the weird thing is that it's working in terms of my engagement as well. I find that the more kind of spur of the moment the content is, the better it is, the more engagement it garners. So yeah, for me, it's very, 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 very limited, very like rough around the edges, I would say. I always want to post at least once a day for the most part, but I have no limit after that. So if I have multiple ideas in one singular day, I don't hold them because again, I forget about them or I don't want to post them the next day or something like that. So I'll just post them all on the same day. So it's not uncommon for me to post 3 posts a couple hours apart from each other. And I don't really care about the initial engagement because what I've found is these platforms are pulling from content at all different time periods. So it doesn't matter if you post once a day, twice a day, 4 times a day, every other day. You could have a video from like, it still happens to me. I'll have a video from like 6 months ago that will all of a sudden start getting shared by a bunch of people. And I'm like, how did you even find this video? Yeah, there really is no rhyme or rhythm at this point in time to the how. It's just, you just need to do it.
So you just rapid fire, spit it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
No real strategy, but you're consistent, which is
and I do have to give shout out. Yeah, I do have to give a shout out to my wife. She's constantly giving me ideas from creators that she watches. She watches like typical like home, like mom vlog creators and makeup artists and things like that. So she's always giving me ideas of, oh, why don't you do a video like this? And I'm always like, why would anybody care about that? But then I'm like, all right, let's try it. And then it ends up being a great video that people really enjoy. So it's, at this point, I've gotten over thinking too much about the content. I'm just like, sure, let's do it. And then if it's terrible, so what? 2 days from now, I'm going to have posted 7 more videos and that one doesn't even matter.
Gotcha. Now, are you a solopreneur or do you actually have a team now behind you when it comes to the content creation, like video editors and such?
Yeah, this is another thing that I think people sometimes assume, which it's I feel like it makes me feel good that they assume that I have a bunch of employees because that means that something looks right. But it's just me. I do everything. I build all of my websites. I build all of like my sales funnels, all of my email campaigns. I have an on-demand program right now that's all been built by me. All of the content, all of the posting, everything is 100% me. I'm in the process of trying to hire an assistant at the moment, but yeah, no, it's just me. I have a videographer that I use often, but it's just on an as needed basis. But yeah, that's it.
Even your whole setup right now, that's all you. Nobody helped you with your
No, yeah, this is
studio?
just if you could see around this, the Wizard of Oz would all fall apart. It's madness immediately surrounding this desk.
Trust me, I can totally relate. I've got children toys and crayons and popcorn and all kinds of junk in front of me that nobody gets to see. So I totally hear you. I totally hear that. That's really amazing. But I will say, you remind me a little bit of me. Once upon a time, I was a solopreneur that did everything. But then when you really want to scale a business, you do realize that you eventually you're going to have to let some things go and outsource it because you only have so much bandwidth in a day. But
100%.
it's still very impressive that you're able to, spit out all this content, be a family man, travel, teach, adjudicate, do all the things, create content, video edit when needed. That's not an easy task. And not a lot of people in the dance world have systematized their content creation and marketing and the way you have or have output it. I feel like you've done a really good job. And I'm assuming your marketing degree had something to do with it, or all this funnel stuff is all self-taught as well.
It's a little bit of both. Unfortunately, the program that I went to was a little bit outdated. Mm-hmm. So I graduated, I don't know, 2013, maybe. That sounds pretty, somewhere around that neighborhood. So social media was like very much in at that point, but the professors that I was taking from were very much, let's learn how to do magazine ads and newspapers and stuff. And so it wasn't really, the concepts were helpful, but the content was not. So a lot of the social media stuff was self-taught in terms of, it sounds dumb, but like you can literally learn and find out about anything that you want. If you have any question, like 99% of the things that I do, I don't know how to do them beforehand. I'm just really efficient at learning new things. And I think that that's a really undervalued skill and something that you can practice and train yourself, is just how to learn something really quickly, because that will benefit you immensely later on. Because there's been so many times where someone's like, do you know how to do this? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, not really, but I know that I can figure it out. So I'm like, yeah, for sure, I can do that. And then it's just like hope for the best after that. It's worked out so far.
That's a great skill to have. Honestly, not a lot of people have that ability, because I've had a lot of coaches and been part of masterminds and all kinds of things. And I don't know that I would have been able to figure everything out to the scale that I have without that extra support. So the fact that you have been able to figure it out, but maybe that is also part of your learning style, because you're telling me you're a self-taught dancer. So, you know, I was more of a classroom kid, even in the dance element. I needed a teacher, and you were a self-taught guy. So maybe that's just your learning style.
For
because
sure.
learning how to build funnels and automations and all that, and it's not an easy thing.
No, I feel like I'm finally starting to get a little older now because lately, I'll expose myself a little bit. Lately, I'm like been trying out some new applications, and I'm like find myself getting more and more confused, and I'm like, there's something going on here. I don't think
Maybe there is a cap to the learning.
I'm not
Maybe.
as spry as I used to be.
It's hard to keep up with all the technology, especially all this AI stuff that's coming out. It is overwhelming. Like I'm trying to keep up and learn and all the things, but it's every week there's like a new AI for this and AI for that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my head is spinning. What do I focus on? Have you tapped into the AI for your business? I'm just curious. And if so, what do you use?
I'm not that old, but this makes me feel even older. I'm like an anti-AI person, to be honest.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know. It's just not for me, but I use it for chopping up my podcast episodes. So there's a website called Opus Pro that I use to chop up my website clips, and it does an okay job. I would say 75% of the time I'm like, this is great. But sometimes I do all the work to do it and it turns out terrible. And I'm like, okay, we'll just do it ourselves. But I know it's a great tool. And I think there's lots of really, really great elements. I think I'm just like, I don't know. I'm notoriously behind the curve on a lot of things though. I tend to be very hesitant on new things until I know that it works. And then I dive in after that.
So are you already an old dog that can't learn new tricks at this point?
Exactly.
Are you 29 and capped out like, oh no, this new learning, that's just too much.
Exactly. Sometimes it works though. Sometimes it works. I remember when NFTs came out, I had a bunch of dance friends that were like, Jason, this is it. Like dancers are going to be millionaires. We're going to make these dance NFTs and we're all going to make money. And I was like, no, you're not. And I know a lot of friends that spent a lot of time and energy in their dance NFTs and they went absolutely nowhere. And so then I got to be like, told you. But sometimes it doesn't work out. Bitcoin is an example of it not working out.
Well, Bitcoin, I think actually is at one of all time. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think, yes, it dropped a while ago. And
no, that's what I'm saying is like when it first came out, I was like hesitant like I always am, but I'm like, okay, let me buy some. I had a lot of Bitcoin early on, and then I was like, this is dumb. And I got rid of it all. And
so
we won't disclose how much I had at one point in time. But
so so that could be a painful, regretful decision if you look at Bitcoin. I haven't looked recently, but I thought I saw something like $100,000 of something crazy.
I probably wouldn't be on this call. I'd probably be somewhere alone in
I was going to say, you might be able to do what you're doing today if you actually kept that Bitcoin.
We won't talk about it.
Here's the projections, at least for AI, because I'm my mentor and coach is really big in AI. And it's kind of like what internet was, at least for when I was a kid. There was a lot of resistance around the internet. There was a lot of even dance businesses that were like, oh, I'm not going to get a website. I don't need the internet. I don't need social media. There was a lot of pushback with my generation and before that were like, I don't need any of that stuff. And now it's, you miss the boat. If you're not online as a dance business, you're probably out of business at this point.
For sure.
And AI is projected to be one of those things that it's rapid fire moving so fast that if you own a business and are not using some element of AI, you're going to fall behind because the productivity of what you can do now is like absolutely insane.
Yeah. I've got one. So I'll count myself in partially.
Okay.
I've got one hand in.
A year from now. It's still relatively new.
It is.
I think I've only been using it for about a year, but my gosh, it's completely changed the way I do business. Though there's so many things that I'm like, whoa, this is mind blowing.
That's fair.
And there's I think a responsible way to use it and also an irresponsible way to use it too. So it's how you use it as well. Like some things you got to keep organic and authentic, but some things you're like, okay, this cuts my work time in for sure fraction of the time. Why not as a business?
And I think there's a lot of creativity like components to AI that are really nice as well. I just barely saw a video from Erica Klein and Hawk, they're both choreographers and dancers, but it was like an AI driven concept video. And it was really, really cool. So I think there's a lot of like really cool things that will come out and be available to dancers with AI, especially like those of us that were bootstrap creators that didn't have all of the resources, like I wish that there was a way for me to transport myself to different locations 10 years ago when I was making a lot of concept videos. And now you can set up a relatively cheap green screen and you can have really great quality outcomes from what's available now. So that is definitely a very cool aspect.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of controversy around AI, especially for artists when it comes to cloning us as dancers. That part I definitely resist.
For sure.
It's more the business side of things when you're trying to mass produce anything on the back end. But as far as in the front end, there's nothing that will ever compare to using a real human being for art, for performance art when it comes to dance, especially.
Yeah.
So I don't think a dancer could ever be truly duplicated. And that's the part that I resist, only because I know as artists that could take away jobs from our industry. Yep. But when it comes to like productivity tasks for business, then that's when I'm like, okay, I'm all about that part. So,
yeah, that's fair.
Again, goes back to the like using it responsibly and not.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I didn't intend to talk about AI, but I don't know. This just happened. See what I told you before we had the call? I was like,
okay. It's okay.
Just go. We actually haven't really talked about AI with a guest. I teach some basic AI stuff with our mentees, so they know some productivity hacks that I've learned.
Yeah.
For themselves. But anyways, all right. I would love to open it up for Q&A for our Business of Dance mentees. All right. First up, we have Carson.
Hi, my name is Carson Mary. I am from West Jordan, Utah. I was wondering, how do you personally go about being able to like judge or teach different things, like whether it's like going into a studio or going to like Utah stuff, like a drill team or something, and choreographing for them? Do they reach out, or is it more of like you reaching out, or like how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And shout out Utah, Carson. We're not that far from each other. There's another component to me, which is that I do not like the hustle of creating and like being an artist. It's actually the one thing that I don't like. I dabbled with being a full-time choreographer and teacher at one point in time, and that's what drove me away from it, is because I hated like the sales aspect of it. So when I started what I do now, that was one of kind of the sub goals, was like, could I create a way where I don't have to reach out to people anymore and they could just come to me? And so now that's where I'm at, is where majority of the things that I do are studios reaching out to me and inquiring. And then from there, I can choose if I want to expand or not. Meaning if a studio in New York reaches out and wants to bring me out, then I can choose if I want to reach out to studios nearby and add on work while I'm there or not. But in the beginning, for the majority of my career, I have always been massive on email. So what I would do is, at the time, I don't have these lists anymore, but at the time when I was coming up and when I started expanding my reach, when I left the original studio that I was at, I went on Google and I pulled up studios in all of the major cities. So I just Googled like studios in North Carolina, studios in da-da-da. I had these lists, state by state, city by city, of like thousands of dance studios. And I would send out monthly emails to them with tips and tricks and things like that. And this was when I was like 16, 17, 18. Teaching hacks, all of the above. And then I would be like, if you want to bring me out, I would love to come out. Ended up getting a couple jobs that way outside of Utah, but I ended up getting a lot of jobs that way from the studios I was reaching out to in Utah, especially because they already knew who I was. Because every time I would go to competitions, one, I'm a male teacher, which is far and few to begin with. Two, I would always be with my teams backstage. So then they would see my pieces and then they'd see me and connect the dots. And then I would always make a point of talking to people at competitions as well and introducing myself. So a combination of all of those things really, really helped me get to where I am now, as well as having mentors that were willing to have me come assist them and introduce me to people.
I love that.
Thank you so much,
Carson. Now, Carson, did you know that he's from Utah as well?
I did know that he is from Utah.
Okay, you did your homework. I love that. Maybe you guys should connect. I don't know Utah, so how far are you guys away from?
I'm like 30 minutes from there. I live in Layton.
Oh. Hey, that's fire. I have a friend that's on Riverton drill team, and she said that you came in and choreographed their show, so that's why I was like putting it all together.
Yep. Okay, you guys will definitely have to connect if you're literally that close to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Actually, while we talk about connection, what's the best way to contact you or connect with you? Is it Instagram, would you say?
Yeah, Instagram or my email. My email is just my Instagram. Hey, it's Pickett at gmail.com. I'm much more responsive on email because I don't have my notifications turned on Instagram. So it's just whenever I hop in there and check is when you'll get a message back. But I do eventually respond.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carson, for your question. All right, next up we have Samantha Gray. Unmute yourself, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Samantha Gray. I'm 12 years old and I'm from Ponte Florida. My question is, what is one of the biggest lessons you've learned from your career?
What's up, Samantha? Shout out Florida. You guys have good weather there. What is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned? It probably it's just like a very used thing, but probably just I don't think I really understood the value of your network and the people you know until it became advantageous to me. And then I realized, looking back now, I'm like, oh man, all of those conversations that I had with people, all of those times that I introduced myself without them saying anything to me, those are now coming back tenfold because of those opportunities. And something I've been thinking about more recently is I was so willing to do whatever it took. There was no sort of, and maybe this was a bad approach, but it got me to where I wanted to be. So I don't know that I can say that, but when I was coming up, there was no sort of question of how much am I getting paid? What am I getting paid? What's the time commitment? It was just, am I available to do this? Is it potentially going to help me get to where I want to go? Fantastic. Count me in. It doesn't mean I didn't say no to anything ever, but there was a lot of times where choreographers would just be like, hey, can you come assist me? Or one of my first jobs was with a really big choreographer named Rosero McCoy, who's choreographed a ton of Disney stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he came into my studio. I was teaching there. He taught a masterclass. He sent me an email a week later and was like, hey, I'm shooting a video for Keke Palmer. I can't pay you, but if you want to come out, you can stay at my house and you can do the video. I would not recommend staying at a choreographer's house. Nothing bad happened, but I'm just saying in hindsight, probably not my smartest idea. He was fantastic. I want to just preface that. And so I did. I bought a ticket. I flew out. I got to film with this videographer who's very, very well known now named Tim Milgram. It was when he was very, very first starting out. Now he has a studio and does a bunch of different things. And I was able to meet a bunch of really cool people and just have that opportunity. And so there was really no bounds to what I was willing to do if I thought that there was even a chance that it could help me get to where I wanted to go.
I love that. Thank you so much, Samantha. All right, next up we have Kyla. Introduce yourself. What is your question?
Hello, my name is Kyla Joyce. I'm from Ontario, Canada, but I'm currently living and training in San Francisco. Going off what you were just talking about, actually, how you said that you said yes to almost every job. What would be a job that would have made you say no and why?
I will be very transparent that this is a skill that I've just recently become better at, is saying no. For a long time, it was a lot of yeses. It was a lot of doing things that were never bad. I was very, very thankfully never put in bad situations, but they were just maybe things that weren't the most advantageous to me. So if I were to go back, I would just tell myself, really pay attention to how it feels for you and your gut. That's what everything is based off for me now. That's what my pricing is based off for me right now. Anytime someone asks me to do something, a price pops into my head, and that's the price that I go with because that's most likely the price that's going to make me feel comfortable doing the job. And now it's that way with yes or no's. If someone reaches out to me, the vibes feel good, I feel good, and I'm like, okay, I think this is cool, then absolutely. Because you'll get hit with so many things as a dancer nonstop. We're going to share you and you'll get so much exposure and you'll get all these things. It never happens. I'm just here to adamantly tell you that if no matter who told you that, if Kim Kardashian was like, hey, let's collaborate and I'm going to share you and a bunch of people are going to follow you, they're not going to. It doesn't work like that anymore. There was a point in time where social media did work like that. It does not work like that anymore. You're going to get 200 followers and you're going to be like, okay, that was fun. So you got to really weigh what are your end goals and is this going to help you get there? So that would be what I would say at this point is trust your gut, trust yourself. We as people and humans are a lot more intelligent and in tune with what's right or wrong than we think we are, but we just have to trust ourselves when it comes to that.
Absolutely. Great advice. Thank you so much, Kyla, for your question. All right. We have Olivia and Serena, the twins.
Hi, Jason. Serena. I'm Olivia. You actually came to Project Dance Center. I don't know if you remember over the summer in Shelton, Connecticut. We took the class. Yeah, it was great. I guess our question for you is more pertaining to freestyle because I know you talk about freestyle a lot. And even in that class, we took in the information. It was very helpful for us. I guess our question is for dancers that kind of gravitated naturally to choreography more and trying to work on our freestyle, what would be like the biggest piece of advice breaking that barrier? We're in the middle of that right now, but I just wanted to know your take on it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I do remember. I remember you guys. The first thing I would say is you just got to push yourself to do it more. What I coach dancers on more recently is making sure that you're giving yourself very specific things to focus on when you're freestyling. So if you just go in, you're like, I'm gonna just freestyle, you're gonna end up doing the same things. You're gonna fall into movement patterns that are very similar. You're not really gonna challenge yourself. So you want to give yourself tasks that can push you out of your boundaries. Body part isolations, mimicking different things from nature or animals or things like that. And then you want to push yourself past your comfort limits. A lot of work that I have done and do now as a dancer working on their freestyle still is making myself freestyle for longer periods of time. Because again, some of us, we can really do really good with that 30 seconds to a minute. And then after that, it's okay, that's all my moves. And then the second part, this is the hardest part because it's a time commitment and it's finding the resources. But this will, if you really want to improve your freestyle fast, put yourself into freestyle communities and communities of dancers that's what they do. You guys are relatively beneficial because you have a pretty good proximity to like New York and New Jersey where there's huge pockets of like very, very, very good freestyle dancers. And you just can't be intimidated. Those are more often than not really welcoming spaces, especially for new dancers that are interested. And you'll be surprised the amount of free education you can get by just popping into freestyle sessions and things like that and battles. It will completely change the way you dance. It'll change your confidence. It'll change the way that you freestyle. If you have the ability to, that would be by far the greatest and quickest way to improving your freestyle.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, getting into those ciphers, doing the bold thing and getting in there raw, real, and rugged. That's definitely a good way to challenge yourself. And I think a lot of studio dancers really struggle with that. That was always my weak point as well. Like choreography, any day, all day. Freestyle, panic.
Yeah. And it's scary from the outside looking in, but I promise you it's not that scary. You might come across characters that are a little bit more straightforward, that don't have the interpersonal communication that you might be used to in the studio world. They might just be like, hey, you're not good right now, but let me help you. But everybody for the most part is very welcoming when it comes to freestyle circles and freestyle communities, and they're all just there to do the same thing because they love dance and they want to get better.
And you can always start in your living room, in your bedroom, like at home. Just throw on some music, put a camera on yourself, and then watch yourself afterwards. Does this even look right?
Definitely. We're in that process right now. And it's been helpful. We've been taking it day by day, but just wanted to elevate it from there. I feel like we're breaking the ice, but now it's like taking a step further and not
the other thing that I would do often was this, I would just call it like freestyle roulette. And this is back when I had an iPod, and I would just put my iPod on shuffle. And I always have been into like a very variety of music, but I would just put my iPod on shuffle and I would just force myself to freestyle to any song that came on, regardless of the style, regardless of what it was. And I would just do that for hours on end. And I think that helped me with my freestyle, one, but it really, really helped me with my musicality because I started to notice like music patterns amongst all different genres. So then I became really good at anticipating what was going to happen in a song, even if I don't know that song.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, the twins, for your question. I'm glad you guys know each other or met or have been in the same room in class. I love that. Dance world is big, but sometimes it's also really small.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Evelyn, you are up next.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Sparrow. I'm 12 years old and I'm from Vancouver, Washington. And my question for you is, if you were to start dancing earlier, would your goal still be the same and why?
No, I don't think so, because I think my goal was really built around what I was inspired by and what I was seeing, and like my naivety of not knowing the process. Like I was very much an outsider to the competitive world, and I still sometimes feel like that. And so I think my goal would have been very, very different. I think I would have fallen into just the hamster wheel of really being caught up in like competitions and that sort of thing. And just, I think it would have been a very different approach. I don't necessarily think that there's a good way or a bad way. There's a lot of things that I'm lacking as a dancer that I don't have because I didn't take that route. But I think, yeah, my goal would definitely be different. I think I would have been much more focused on the actual dancing. Whereas the route that I took, I was more focused on like the creative and the choreography and like the networking and business side of it. And I also had this like incredibly huge ego at the time because I was an outsider. I was just like, I know everything and I'm the greatest. And I think that was really bad, but it also was really good because in my head, everything I did was amazing. There was nothing that I did that wasn't good. So it really allowed me to be much more bold with my choices, which as you get older, you'll learn becomes much harder. Your ego starts to take a back seat a little bit more and you start to question everything you do. And it's not as exciting as when you didn't care what people thought.
That's a great skill to have, honestly, because believing in yourself is like step one in being successful. Yeah. Even if you did have an ego at once upon a time, the fact that you were just courageous enough to make big and bold moves is probably why you are where you are. Because if you were really perceptive of what really was going on and maybe your a lack of experience or lack of training, you could have been in your head like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified enough. But you're like, I don't care. I'm great. You want to hire me. And that probably transcended to people that did hire you. They're like, I like this raw, real, and rugged kind of guy that's actually your superpower in the end. And you're absolutely right. As you get older, it's like a puppy. When a puppy, they're like wet behind the ears and they're just like happy and they don't really care. They love everybody and they're just completely naive. And then you get the old dog that's a little bit more cautious, a little bit more edgy, not willing to take risks anymore, and a little bit more hesitant. So yeah, you're absolutely right. As you get older, you start to care a little bit more. That childlike side of us that we all have when we're really little sometimes goes away.
Yep. And right now I'm currently in the process of unraveling all of that. And I think a lot of it's due to me having kids because now I see my son make choices or say things or play with his toys in a way that I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? But then I'm like, why not? So I'm currently in this era of trying to unravel that second guessing and take myself back to a point of where I'm not really thinking too much about what I'm doing. I'm just doing it.
Yeah. No, there's something pure about that in a child. And you're able to see that they just do things that feels good. Like they don't care
100%.
what anybody else thinks.
100%.
And we get so caught up, especially the teenage world, the teenage phase of life. I feel like we care so much about what our peers think. And then the adult life, I feel like people start to care even more about that. But there's something really magical about a young child that just is carefree, that just lives life and does whatever feels good and explores. And that's where the magic happens, really, is going back to that. So it's cool to see that as a parent when you see that in your kids as well.
Yeah.
I can totally relate. My kids make all kinds of dances. Last night, they did a little show and tell for me. They don't care if there's no technique. They don't care if it doesn't make sense. They're like, no, just throw it on. I'm like, great, I love it.
Yeah,
I would never put it in competition. Great. I'm like, go have fun. So it's fun to create and explore like that and just be childlike or child-minded in that regard. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Evelyn. Great question. Brianna, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Brianna Albanese. I'm from Connecticut, but I'm currently living and training in Los Angeles. My question is, if any, what was a mistake that you made while first starting out, and what would you do differently?
I think I really have to answer from a teacher perspective because that's what I was doing at the time. But I didn't understand or care about how other people felt or what other people were going through. Like my empathy was very low when it came to my teaching and just my approach to people in general. So that would be one thing that I would definitely change is I would try to be more aware of the room and the energy that I was consumed by. And then I think from a dancer specific thing, and this is a shift that happened for me just recently, maybe the past couple of years, is I was not very keen on celebrating other people. In classes, I was really consumed with myself and my process and like how well I was doing, and did I have the combo or did I not have the combo? And then I started to hate class, and I started to hate dance in general, because you can only like work on something for so long before it just starts to become really, really demotivating and not very fun. And so as soon as I started like celebrating other people and enjoying other people's process in class and like genuinely watching other people, then I started to like really, really love taking class again and really, really love dancing again. And then I was able to find this balance between taking class for myself and having my process, but also making sure that I take time to celebrate and acknowledge and take in what other people are doing. And it just started to help me enjoy class even more. So that would probably be something that I would definitely go back and change, was all those times at convention where I just kind of like was consumed by myself and what I was doing, as opposed to all of these incredible people that were around me. At the time that I was going to conventions, I was taking class with like people like Sean Liu and Casey Rice and all of these like big choreographers now that are doing things. I was taking class with all of those people when they were younger. And I don't really have much to show for that other than me being able to say that. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't take the opportunity to introduce myself and chat and have conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because class, yes, is to learn. So yes, you do want to focus on yourself as well, but it's also in a convention setting like that. It's also a great place to make new relationships and to
100%.
meet people. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. That yes, enjoy the process and focus on obviously your skill set and your performance, but look around the room. Like, who is there that's interesting that you want to meet, you want to connect with? Because as we've talked about before, the relationships that you make, that's going to lead to opportunity. Not being 100%. So in the corner, self-consumed, but actually making those genuine connections, whether it's another peer in the room, whether it's another dance parent, maybe, or it's a teacher in the room or an assistant in the room. You just never know who knows who. And as I always like to preach with my mentees, contacts equals contracts.
Yep.
And you really,
especially being in LA, you're surrounded by the people that are going to be not just choreographers one day, but they're going to be booking agents, they're going to be casting directors, they're going to be talent agents, like they're going to be social media managers. You're in the room with those people right now, even if you don't know it. So those genuine relationships that you build could pay out tenfold 5 to 10 years from now.
Absolutely. That was one thing that we talked about, Brianna. She just started with us, and I said she's new to LA, only been there 3 months. And I was like, your number one goal, yes, get into class and all those things, but your number one goal is to make friends. Make as many friends as possible, because those friendships are going to lead to opportunity, and make sure they're genuine ones, not intentional just for the sake of jobs. But if you connect with somebody, get to know them, because you never know what that relationship can lead to. And
100%.
And also the industry has changed so much recently. I've been talking to agents and casting directors. They're not having open calls like they did in my generation. It's direct bookings. It's, are you available next week? And if they don't know you exist, you're not even getting considered. You're not even in, you got to get in the rooms, whether it's a virtual room like this right now, or whether it's a physical room in a class or a physical room at a dance event or dance function. You have to make those valuable connections.
100%.
Because
I have a former student that's in LA. He's been there for a little bit over a year now. His roommate is somebody that he met at a convention. His roommate happens to be one of Nick Demora's main people, which is, he's Justin Bieber's choreographer. Now he's much more than a choreographer, but through that relationship, he moved to LA and 2 weeks later was in Saudi Arabia on a $15,000 contract. In all of those dancers, that group, they're getting booked consistently, and there is no audition. There's a text message and that's it. And same thing, Justin Bieber's planning on doing a comeback tour in 2025. all of those dancers have already been contacted. Hey, keep an eye out because this is going to happen. And, you're there. It's not to discourage. It's just to continue to validate this idea that like the relationships that you build are the way that you get into those spaces, because it's trust and money. That's what it boils down to. Is when we're booking a job and we have a budget that we need to be in line with, I need to trust that you can do the job and do it perfectly every time. And I need to know that it's going to not cost us any extra money to have you. Sometimes auditions can be a costly process. And the problem is COVID was a realization for a lot of creative directors and artists and productions and labels. They realized that, wow, this is a huge cost that we're putting up to audition all these dancers. And sometimes it doesn't pay out. So we can avoid all of this if we just direct book the people we know that can do a great job.
Absolutely. Even just in this virtual room right now, one of you might be a big choreographer. One of you might be the next agent. One of you might be the next producer. One of you might be the next competition owner. And one of you is going to hire the other.
Yep.
Even in this room, even if you feel like you're quote unquote a nobody yet in the industry, even though you may not have established yourselves yet, those genuine relationships that you even have as a child, as a teen, and as a young adult, those eventually the dots will connect. Even connecting with Jason, you never know what that relationship could lead to. Connecting with each other amongst your peers, you never know what that could lead to. And when it comes from a genuine place and you generally just want to be friends with somebody, and it's not with the intent of booking a job, that's when the magic really happens, because people really just like to hire people that they know can trust. And that's just human nature. There's a dime a dozen talented, beautiful dancers around the world. But what's going to set you apart is, how are you as a person? How are you in the room? Am I going to enjoy working with you? Are you going to bring some extra drama to the room? Or are you going to be pleasant to work with and easygoing? And maybe somebody else next to you is actually more talented than you. They got an ego, and I don't want to deal with that. I would rather deal with somebody that's just a little bit more pleasant, has a can-do attitude, than deal with somebody that might be a little more talented, but they're just going to bring a lot of extra stress that I don't need. Great advice. Yeah. Let's go to our next, and it looks like our final question. Haley.
Hi, Jason. I'm Haley. I'm from New York. I have a couple of questions, but we could start with one. The twins mentioned freestyle, so I'm going to mention choreo. How do you stop thinking and keep your confidence up when learning new combos? Because I'm more freestyle than choreo.
Yeah. So I've been like rinse and repeating this thing that I heard on a podcast recently from somebody on the Kinjas. The question was like this same question: how do you pick up choreography faster? And he jokingly responded, you stop trying to pick up the choreography faster. And I think there's like a lot of value to that. I think the way that I've been explaining it is like those games that you see, I see them online all the time, where it's like very zoomed in picture of like an animal, and it's, what is this animal? And then it slowly zooms out. I think sometimes we do that to ourselves in class. We're so focused on the details and we're so zoomed in on the choreo that we can't really see what's going on. And if we were to just kind of like zoom out a little bit and take a step back, we'd be able to see like, oh, that is just this groove that I did last week repurposed in a different way. Because sometimes too, teachers explain things in a way that's so confusing, and they do it in an effort to make it, they think they're making it easier to pick up, but at the same time, they're like breaking down if you were to break down a two-step, it would be really confusing. And you would be like, what? And then you would watch it and be like, why did you do that? Why didn't you just show us? So I think sometimes we do that to ourselves. We're too focused. And so we have to take a step back and then just trusting yourself and relying on what you do know, because we all know something. We all have an element of something. And so you have to lean on that when you're in a choreography class, is what is my background? Where am I coming from? And how do I apply that to this situation? And then the last component is just take more class. The more combos you learn, the better that skill is going to get. But yeah.
Yeah. Repetition. It's a muscle. Our brains are a muscle. So the more you do it, the more repetition, eventually, 100%. It gets easier over time. But I do agree with sometimes the micro details is stresses out your brain to where you actually don't remember anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes I find if I take class and I'm struggling, sometimes if I just mark it like with a carefree kind of mindset, it'll flow better than if I'm like trying to make it perfect and then I'm like resisting. It's almost like if you're in a car accident, this sounds so bad, but if you're in a car accident and you're like tense, then you're going to get whiplash.
Yeah.
And then it's you're going to feel that resistance. But if you're like sleeping in a car and there's a car accident, you're like, boom, boom, and you're just like
you're fine.
jello, you're fine. So that was a really bad analogy, but that's
a great analogy.
That just came to mind.
That's what it feels like in class when you can't get the choreo. It's like the most
because you're like
frustrating
resisting.
thing ever.
You're like, oh my gosh, this is stressing me out. I can't get it done. But if you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to flow through it and mark through it. And somehow it starts to get into your body better. And then you can put the energy behind it once the brain
100%.
actually is able to process it.
Yeah.
But
it's funny you say that, Manita, because I saw somewhere that instead of doing soft mark to do hard mark so that the routine comes out better. And like for me, I use muscle memory. So if I'm marking it like softly, I don't know if that has anything to do with the final routine.
Yeah. So
it's interesting that you say to be relaxed and mark it, relax and go full out.
Yeah.
Once the brain processes, but like if the choreographer is moving slow enough that you could be like, hit it hard, like on the first take, hit it hard with them. But then if your brain starts to do jambalaya and you're like, whoa, I need to like slow this down. That's when you need to maybe just flow with it a little bit more until it really processes in the brain and then hit it hard. But if you hit it hard while your brain is like spastic, then you're just going to look frantic and it's going to stress you out even more.
Yeah. And I'm very like, everybody has their own approach. That's what makes dance so interesting and cool. I'm very like abnormal when I take class in the sense that I'm like, I'm Mark City. I'm marking 98% of class and I'm going full out only when I need to. One, because I'm lazy. Two, I'm not as actively training as a lot of you probably are. So I'm not trying to get injured in class. And three is it just helps my process. Like I use full out as checking my work. So when I do go full out, that's my purpose is I'm going full out to see if I have the combo. And if something goes terribly wrong, then I'm like, okay, we need to figure out what's wrong here. If it goes right, then I'm like, cool, let's keep chugging along.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Haley, for your question. All right, before we sign off, what is next for you? You've tapped a little bit into everything with dancing, teaching, choreography, content creation, podcast producer, host, husband, dad. What do you see in your future? What is your vision? What are you working towards?
I've always said that from the start, I envisioned No Starving Artists as being like a dance media company where there's multiple personalities similar to myself that create content underneath No Starving Artists. I've always related it to a Barstool Sports for dance, where it's just a conglomerate of creators and they're funded and embraced by No Starving Artists to do what it is that they want to do. It's obviously very, very easy to say that, way, way harder to execute on that because money is a factor. And finding people that are genuinely hungry and genuinely willing to put in the work to do what that requires. But that's definitely the big picture. Very, very next, I've been really working on building out my on-demand side of No Starving Artists, where there's a video library that dancers can learn from that are things outside of just what you would normally get inside of a studio. And then in 2025, I'm shooting to be able to open up a physical space here in Utah. That's just a single room studio that would have my podcast office. It would have a workspace, and then it would have a studio component as well, where I can do private master classes, private lessons, and then also film content there. That's kind of like 2025 goals.
That's amazing. I love that you're creating your own lane. You're not your typical dancer that wants to tour with the big artists, and like you're creating a dance enterprise, like your dance business, which I love.
Yeah.
This is the business of dance. But I also like your message with No Starving Artists, because that's really a narrative that I'm personally trying to change as well.
100%.
Because it irks me that so many dancers and parents, they don't see dance as a viable career.
No. And sometimes too, like people, I always felt this idea that like if I made a lot of money off of dance and I was successful off of dance, then I was like a sellout and I was no longer creative and I was no longer like an artist in an artist size. And that always frustrated me because I'm like, I don't want to be broke in order to get the validation from my community. But yeah, you're spot on. I was chatting with Regold recently, and he worded my journey as I maneuvered my way into the spaces that I'm in now. And that was very much the goal, is like, how can I get into these spaces without doing what everybody else had to do? Because quite frankly, what most people have to do to get into these spaces is just more work than I actually want to do. That sounds lazy, but it's just, I don't have the time. I got bills now. So I can't like wait 10 years and go assist on a convention and do this and do that. I don't have time for it. So it was a question of how do I get there without it? And then answering this other question, there was one other component from the chat I had with Francisco. And he asked me, he said, "Are you ready?" And I said, yes. Yes. At this point, yes. And he said, okay, because if you're going to do this, people are going to start listening and people are going to put you where you need to go. But if you're not ready, it's not going to work out. And I took that really, really heavily. And I evaluated that really, really heavily after that conversation, because I was like, the last thing I want is to do all this work, get myself into these spaces, and then people go, oh, this person's a fraud that doesn't actually know what they're talking about and doesn't actually have any value add, and then kick me right out. So I had to be really sure that I was 100% ready to start taking up the spaces that I wanted to take up.
I think in this industry, you have to always be ready.
Yeah.
Because there is no time for preparation. A lot of the times it's, are you available to do this job tomorrow? Yeah. Just be ready and go and do it. If you hesitate, procrastinate, oh, I got to get ready. That's a lot of excuse-itis. I see a lot. Like, I got to get ready to get ready. I'm not ready for that. No, you got to be ready. Even when
you just got to do it.
You just got to do it. You got to just take massive action, even if it's a bit messy. But I think also why you seem at least ready for a lot of these opportunities is you also created a very strong personal brand for yourself.
Yeah.
Which allowed you to the visibility to be able to be seen and be considered. Because if you didn't have your social media presence with your credibility, I don't think that you would have succeeded the way that you have.
No.
But you've been able to show and tell, so to speak, to the world of this is what I do and this is the value that I bring. And if you like it, buy it. And it served you well.
Yeah, 100%.
What would you say to building the personal brand and how important that really is and how that's affected you in your career?
Number one is have an opinion. You can't be afraid to have an opinion. If you're afraid to have an opinion, then it's not going to happen. Just that's like point blank. That's the one mistake that I see a lot of people making when they start creating content is they try to play the middle and they don't want to have an opinion on anything. You can't do that. It's not going to work, because if you don't have an opinion, then you're trying to please everybody and then you're going to please nobody. So that's step one, is you have to be okay with having an opinion. And that doesn't mean like you just constantly have hot takes. It just means like you have to have an identity. You have to have an answer to the questions. You have to have an opinion. So that's one. You have to have that. You have to be okay with people not agreeing with your opinion. And you have to be able to handle that, because that's a whole nother element that pops up when you start creating content online, is people not liking what you create or not agreeing with what you create. And you have to be able to deal with that. And then know who you're talking to. Know exactly who you're speaking to and speak to that person. That's the other fatal mistake that I see people make, is they try to speak to way too many people. Know who you're speaking to and address that audience directly, because at this point in time, there's enough people on social media that there is an audience for everything and anything. And if you speak to that audience and you have something valuable to give them, then they will listen. And then from there, you just keep doing that. You just keep doing the same thing. It just becomes easier and easier and easier, as long as you're convicted to the things that you believe in. So that would probably be the biggest thing that I would say. And then one thing that got passed on to me from, his name's David Gonzalez. He runs and is the creator of World of Dance. And in early on conversations with them for work that I do for them now, one of the things he asked me was like, is this your look? Is this what you want to go with? Is this what you want people to see? Because a lot of people are going to see you, and you can't necessarily be back and forth on the way you look all the time. So is this the final form of, hey, it's Pickett? And again, that was another question that I had to answer for myself of, what is my brand? What do I want people to see on their feed and stop because they know that it's me and they recognize that it's me? There wasn't a ton of thought that went into that. And I don't think you necessarily have to put a ton of thought into it, but you just have stuff you have to consider. As you're building a personal brand, you are the brand. So imagine if Walmart was changing their logo every single week. If they had a new logo every single week, that'd be really confusing for people. So you have to recognize that you are the brand, you are the aesthetic, you are the vibe. So there has to be a little bit of consistency there in order for people to jump on board.
I love that you said, I am the brand. I literally have a sweatshirt that says that from my mentors. Their next live event is called I Am the Brand.
I love that.
It has nothing to do with dance, but it's true. Building a personal brand, from everything that I'm at least learning in the business space, is the future of being able to do business.
100%.
You can no longer be just the owner of a big corporation and not know who is behind the brand, because if that corporation you exit or you sell it or it folds or whatever, you lose all of that audience because they don't know who you are. They don't know the person behind that particular brand. So building that strong personal brand is essential. Love him or hate him. I know he's a very controversial person, but Elon Musk, he has built a massive personal brand for himself. He's not, we know Tesla, but we also know the person as well that's behind that. And when you build a personal brand, the beauty of that is if you create a business and it goes away or you sell it or whatever, and you create another business, people follow you.
People follow,
on the journey. Right now, you're a no starving artist, but maybe in 10 years from now, you're going to create something completely different. But imagine if you were not a face online and you just were starving artists, and that folded and that whole audience disappeared, and then you magically appeared with some new brand, nobody would know who you are. But now that people follow you on your journey, doesn't matter what you do, whether you teach, judge, do a podcast, content creation, whatever, they follow you, the person
100%.
first, not the business that may come and go. Because you will always be you. That will never change.
What
you do for a living, what you do as a business, that may come and go in different seasons of your life. So I've put a lot of energy in personal branding just in this past year, and I've learned a lot from my coaches and mentors. And I cannot stress that enough for dancers, that really being clear on who are you and what do you want the world to see you and perceive you as. So when you talk about the look, like, is this your look? Is this your vibe? Is this what you want? Who are you speaking to? I love that you say that. Who's your audience? Otherwise, and I love that you said that if you're trying to serve everybody, you serve no one, because nobody feels like you're actually talking to them. And I think we have a very similar audience as well. Like I talk to dancers and dance parents. That is my audience now. No, I think that's beautiful. It's such an awesome conversation. We went everywhere today. So different topics. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
The fact that you guys are on this call, and the fact that you guys are doing this with Menina, and the fact that you are taking these steps in your career and what you want to do, that's like more than a lot of other people are doing. And it shows that you're committed and you're serious. So don't take that for granted. It's one thing to step into a room, but what you do once you're in there is really, really what matters. So take advantage of all those opportunities. Take advantage of every opportunity that you come across, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. The last thing that I'll leave you with as just a short story is going back to my friend. His name's Julian. He lives in LA. He is like the king of asking questions. He will just DM someone and be like, "Hey, can I come on tour with you guys?" Even if the answer is no, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. A lot of times he gets yeses. A lot of times people are like, "Yeah, sure, come to the audition." Or actually, I have a skeleton crew that I need somebody for. Can you come do that? So you can't be afraid to just ask a question, even if it seems crazy, because you don't know what's happening in the other person's life. You might go to a convention and you might introduce yourself to the teacher after class and go, "Hey, just so you know, I'm looking for assistant opportunities, or I would love to be able to help you with any projects you might have." They might be working on a project at that moment that they need people for. And just because you took that initiative and they were able to see you in class, they were like, yeah, sure, come along. So you can't be afraid to ask, but the first step is going into the room. And then again, what are you going to do once you get in there?
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of the Business of Dance, we want to give you some virtual love. Let's show them how we do it, guys. Sending you lots of hearts. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your energy, all your stories, and your very unique journey that is really refreshing to hear.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being with us. Final plug, anything you want to plug? What's the best way for people to find you, connect with you?
Yeah, website's nsadance.com, No Starving Artist, just abbreviated. And then, like I said, email is heyitspickett@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out with any questions or anything like that. I'm more than happy to answer and facilitate.
Amazing. Again, dancers, thank you so much for being on here. And Jason, thanks for being transparent and great to connect with you and put you in the hot seat this time.
Absolutely.
So dancers, go check out the episode that I'm a guest on his show, No Starving Artist. We had a great conversation and it was great to reciprocate. And that's the power of relationships.
100%.
It actually started, funny enough, funny story. It started with my publicist, I think. They reached out to you initially because they were like, what are your wish list podcasts? And I stumbled you on YouTube. Honestly, it was a YouTube interview that you did. I think it was with Taja Riley. I was like, who's this guy? And I didn't know anything about you at the time. And then I told my publicist, I was like, add this to my wish list. And then they reached out to you. And then
that's another example of an ask. Taja's like an incredible artist, incredible dancer and choreographer. And she liked one of my posts and I messaged her and just was like, hey, will you do a podcast episode? And she said yes. So
amazing.
A week later, we were in LA together and we did the episode. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, no, and it's funny how the dots connect. And then a few weeks after that whole connection, I see you in Vancouver at a competition.
In Canada,
you're judging my daughter. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, we need to make this podcast happen now. So
100%.
And now here we are flipping seats where you get to be in the hot seat. And and I that this is again how organically relationships happen. It's just, hey, you available for this? Cool. Are you available for that? Oh, I think you'd be great for this. And one thing just snowballs into the next thing. So I truly believe this is a new relationship that will eventually reconnect in different capacities. And I love what you're doing. And we speak to a very similar audience. And keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And that concludes another episode of the Business of Dance podcast.
We hope you found today's conversation insightful and gained valuable knowledge.
Be sure to join us next time for more inspiring interviews with top professionals in the dance industry.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to The Business of Dance on your favorite platform and take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated.
This podcast is brought to you by the Business of Dance online mentorship program to help aspiring professional dancers create their dream dance careers.
Thank you for listening. Until next time.